One of the most famous stars, if not the most famous, is probably Orion the Hunter. There are others such as Little Dipper, Big Dipper, or the Bears, if you will. The North Star, the Pleiades, Taurus, people know a lot about. But how long have people been actually keeping up with astronomy? There were Sumerian tales that said it went back hundreds of thousands of years to keep up with where they were at this point. It's hard to find any artifacts that go back much dating, but I think we found one more that really shows a connection. In a few thousand years, these stars actually won't even be connecting in the same way. People wonder about ancient wizards and what they were up to, and quite often it had to do with astronomy, and in fact, alchemy had to do with it, along with sacred geometry and everything, so it pretty much surrounded them. So whenever we find an artifact that's like this, it may take a little while for people to understand what they're actually seeing. One man looking into this actually figured out that he's in the exact Orion pose, that this is not just a man, which dated to 32,500 years ago, would put it well into Cro-Magnon times, and time before we would probably believe that they had an astronomy, if we didn't have other connections too that we know of, like Lascaux Cave, which showed they had a perfect correlation with Taurus and the Pleiades. In fact, if that wall was actually see-through, you would be able to see that at that time during winter of those seasons, whenever the people would have been there, or during that epoch of time, it would have correlated just right with it. Remember that cave? It was the one where the artist, who had no idea the age of the cave at the time, showed up, and they thought that they had reinvented or re-envisioned artistry in the Renaissance, and then they started saying they pretty much had invented nothing. But they had thought that that was only a few thousand years ago at the time, for people thought that. This is made out of ivory from a mammoth. It's not too big, about 4 or 5 inches long, 4.5 by 2.5. Would have been maybe some type of pendant. Seems like the very top part of it might have had some connective, and it's broken off now or eroded away. There are marks along the sides of this, and there are marks on the back of it that show something too that's pretty telling. But just the fact that he's in that same Orion pose. Something we've talked about too with the ancient Egyptians, whenever you see him in that smiting pose, no matter who he's smiting, seems to exactly correlate with the Orion pose, and people have made connections to the Great Pyramids and how that makes out the belt. So this was found back in 1973 inside a Auk cave in Germany in 1979, I'm sorry. But in 1993, a man started looking at it. They dated it again, came up with a date of 32,500 years ago, but also looking at the markings on the back of it and the symbolism going with 9 and how many notches that go along with that, and the ones that are along the edges, feel like that this may have something to do with the birthing cycle of women. And we've seen that in quite a few ancient artifacts, and that's led people to believe in the lunar cycle calendars and so on. But this easily is a type of calendar here on the back of it, and it correlates again with the notches on the side. So again, this is proposed to be in the Orion pose. If it would, that would just be amazing. If not, it's still the oldest depiction of a humanoid that we have at this point. We do have Holfels' Lion Man, where it's a depiction like this, but made more like a statue. Made something more looking like a G.I. Joe, if you will. And that statue has a lion head upon it. So that's an anthropomorphic person, but this is quite a unique find and something that you don't see very often. For it seems to be away in a ancient German museum in one of their exhibits, and it doesn't get talked about too often. But these Orion connections show a lot of similarity in going through time, and I believe in my studies here through it I've shown you at least 10, 12, perhaps more connections going through time. This is one of the earliest, though. If we can make that connection, it looks like it's in the Orion pose, in that exact stature, if you will, but at 32,500 BC, dating a mammoth bone being carved as such. So it's pretty neat. You can see the stuff on the back of it and front here. And so it may have something to do with ancient pregnancy rites or things like that. Pretty unique. You can see that leg's kicked up as it would be, the arm in pose and so on. You know, in the first ones, it was like Hercules, and he really just had a club. Then it turned into a bow and arrow, had Orion the Hunter, and it kept going from there. So, is this that same guy? Well, we're really at a period in time here whenever Orion is the hunter. For if we were to go back in time about 350, 400,000 years, it would start to get real out of kilter. They say around about 1,000,000 years ago, you would have thought it was a turtle or something else, and you sure wouldn't have said it was a man. But as the stars have come bending into shape, at least to our eyes, they've ended up making this perfected shape, which seems to connect to man. If you give it another couple of 20,000 years, it'll be gone away again. You get a couple of 100,000 years from now, and it really won't look like it is. They're showing that speeded up right here through time. So we're at a strange point in time, but also where we can point out something that people were seeing long ago when it was just first coming into vision of being able to see it. And now we're watching it to where it slowly goes away and gets out of point. And I don't know what we'll try to say that it looks like whenever it starts to do this. But that's the bent pyramid. Yeah, that's it. Something. Anyhow, let me know what y'all think downstairs here. But if it is not a correlation to Orion, it is at least the oldest depiction of a humanoid man at 32,500 BC.